Hi everyone, thank you. My name's Shahida Siddique. I'm the Chief Exec of an organisation called FaithStar. How would I describe it? It's something that I'm really passionate about. I would describe us as having the values and ethos of the VCF sector, the partnerships of the public sector, and the drive of the private sector. If it's one thing I've learned throughout my experiences, I've lived apologies, I don't know how that happened. I'm so sorry. I'll start again after talking to myself. Good afternoon, everyone. I'm Shahida. I'm the Chief Exec of FaithStar. We're an organisation that's been around for nearly a decade, but we're very passionate about racial and social justice, equalities, human rights and inclusion. And right now, the health and social care agenda is really, really important to those two areas of work, racial and social justice. And civic action informing that work has been really, really vital. When we talk about health and social care and how we hear lived experiences of communities and how we can enable and empower that voice, civic action and the potential for civic action becomes so vital. And I say this from lived experience of sitting in, and I'm sure as many of you will have, hundreds of meetings where people in health and social care will talk about, let's do some co-production with the service users, or let's go out and do a consultation with the communities. But in doing so, it's with a preordained, predestined, pre-designed strategy, framework, structure, policy that, you know, they want everybody else to fit into. And the impact of that is it takes away agency, empowerment, voice, influence, creativity, innovation, solutions from the very communities that are wanting to address whatever those issues are. So I always kind of struggle with that term co-production, because I think, well, actually, what does that really mean? And when we look historically at the impact on civic action over the last 20 years, we've had a concerted effort to dismantle the structures around civic action that would enable people to have voice on whatever issue it is, be that community engagement, community empowerment, community networking, community solidarity, whatever that might be. But we've lost a lot of that in civic action. And so when a crisis situation hits, and we were hit with the pandemic, the potential for civic action really and truly came into its own. And it came into its own because, you know, we saw the emergence of mutual aid groups where people were like, I just want to help my next door neighbour, I want to do something locally. But civic action also took many different forms. Civic action could be down to somebody, you know, making the decision that today, no matter how much they're struggling and they're sat in the pit of a black hole and they can just see a tiny speck of a light up there, that they were going to fight their inner demons and get up that day. And so sometimes civic action is in the minutiae of fighting within your own head and going, I'm going to function today. But civic action is also the other extreme, where it's the bringing together of people, it's the bringing together of ideas, it's the bringing together of solutions, and it's seeing members of the community as assets, as experts in their own lived experience, as experts to share what happened to how they improved their own lived experience that could potentially positively impact on others. But because we have lost the knots that bind us, the things that tie us together as communities for very many years, that disconnect has created vacuums. And within that vacuum, civil action has taken a very different form. Because civil action without a clear purpose, civil action without a clear vision, civil action that doesn't define what it wants to change, just sits there in a vacuum, you know, and that's all that it does. And I think it's really important that when we talk about the potential for civil action, when we talk about the richness of communities, that we don't do to communities, and that we don't even do with communities, but that we actually sit right there within communities. And you know, I've sat in so many meetings and in so many spheres of influence, and people have said to me, oh, what can we do, Shahida? What can we do to change things? How can we address structural inequalities? And how can we address, you know, hearing some of those minority voices that we don't normally hear? And I simply say to people, get out from behind your desk and walk into those communities and just be present, because that will inform you. And one of the methodologies that we created at FaithStar, which we use in a whole range of our work, is a methodology called Listen, Learn and Act. And what we particularly say to people who are predominantly white people, I will say, so anybody who's not a person of colour or black, we will say, we need you to listen, learn and act. And what that means is, if you're not a person of colour, just shut up and listen. Listen and hear what we've got to say, and let us share our lived experiences. And that principle applies to any community out there that is facing any kind of social injustice, be it disability, debilitating long-term health conditions, mental health, whatever it might be. Listen, and then learn about what we're telling you. Learn about where we're saying to you that there are problems in the system. Learn where we are saying to you there are gaps in the system, or this isn't right, this isn't working. And then act on it. And the act bit is really important. This is where civil action comes into its own. And I've had this debate many a time where people will say, well, we need to go out and protest outside the town hall. And my response has been, yes, a protest is really good, and getting a following on social media is really fantastic. But unless you know that that is going to impact the commissioners or the criteria writers for the bid that they want at the council, or whether you know that that is going to influence the people in the NHS or the CCG or whatever other provision within health and social care, unless you know the people, those decision makers that need to be impacted, what point is there for you standing outside the town hall? Because standing outside the town hall is one thing, getting into the system within the town hall and influencing change there, that to me is civil action as well. And there's nothing wrong with protesting, it has its place. But civil action is more, and I get really frustrated. I hear people, you know, they talk about civil action as if there's this, you know, movement, and it's not just a movement. It's in the everyday, it's in the mundane, it's in the fighting at so many different spheres, at so many different levels. And it's about re-education and retraining and reconnecting, and it's about rebuilding relationships, and it's about reconnecting people where they can have a voice and they can have an influence. So civil action takes so many different forms, and it takes so many different skill set, and we have those skill set in communities. We have those community connectors. They're the one person that everybody goes to when they've got an issue, and it doesn't matter if, you know, the public sector or the kind of establishment, central government, whatever the health and social care structures and sectors are above her, all of it, yeah, that's there, that's great. But actually, if that's disconnected from communities and people and their lived experiences, and if all we're defined as is service users and clients and patients and people that we just need to kind of fit into neat little boxes, we never get truly meaningful change. And so to me, we need to celebrate the potential for civil action, because we need to tap into that spirit. We need to tap into that spirit that says, together, and sometimes maybe even not together, we can actually do something, and we can make a change in whatever it is we want to make a change to. So for me, civil action, the power of civil action is rooted in the citizen, and it's rooted in the community, and whatever that community might be. But it's also about intersectionality, because as Melissa touched upon in her presentation, you know, we can't just lump people together. We can't just say, well, actually, you know, we have this problem over here, but actually we're not going to hear from all these people because we don't really, we don't get it. We don't, you know, we can't understand it. And some of our community, some members of our community are at a distinct disadvantage, and they aren't just starting at a place of inequality or racial and social injustices, that isn't the same starting point as everybody else. And so when we talk about civil and civic action, it's about how do we level up our community civil action and civic action that is rooted in racial and social equity, that is rooted in environmental and health equity, that says, actually, we know when we come together around this particular civil action that some of us in the room have got it worse. And that's not to take away from anybody else, but that if we're genuinely going to inspire change, if we're genuinely going to address some of these issues, it starts with, first of all, looking at ourselves and looking at our comrades and our colleagues and saying, well, actually, I need to be at the same point in the journey that they are. Do we have a shared vision? Do we have a shared understanding of what it is that we're trying to emulate in this civil action? And is whatever action it's taken, have we got the right actors in the room? Because sometimes civic action doesn't always go the way we want it to go, you know? Oh, interesting. Yeah, somebody just put, where does class put into it? And that's an interesting one, class and race and intersectionality of class.
Or wind up, if that's okay.
Okay, yeah. So I'll leave it there, but just to say that for me, the potential of civic action to change health and social care is about making it person-centered, community-centered, and rooted in people's lived experience.